Good afternoon. My name is Cadet LaPuierria Frasier, and I'll be your interviewer for today. Today's date is April 13th, 2013. And what is your name, ma'am?
My name is Captain LaJuanda Brown.
Yes, ma'am. And can you tell me an overview of your general career and service?
I have been in the military for 25 years. I am what you call a 70 Bravo, which is a medical administrative officer, basically, in the Army Reserve. I am also a teacher, and I've been in the teaching profession 19 years, minus a couple of years of some active duty service time. And I'm teaching here at Military Magnet Academy. This is my 6th year here.
That's amazing. And what are some memorable childhood experiences that you remember?
My mother was a teacher, and she actually was the advisor for a 4-H club. And I think she did a good job of it, but one thing that always comes back to me is the fact that she organized an annual trip for her 4-H group every year. So we traveled to Georgia, Washington, D.C., Florida, Tennessee, Gatlinburg, and then Knoxville, Tennessee is the one that is most memorable to me because we went to the World's Fair. So it was like a first time, the first opportunity before Google and being able to, kind of have the world at your fingertips.
Yes, ma'am.
Where I was able to experience the world, in person. So we were able to go in places at the World's Fair like China and experience what that culture looked like other than in pictures, in Japan, Africa, Native American culture. So it was amazing. It was one of the best trips that I've ever experienced, and it just always comes back to me as something I want to do for my children. I wish it was something I could expose all my students to, but that's unfortunate I can't.
Yes, ma'am.
But it is something that I wish they could all experience.
That's wonderful. What made you want to join the military?
Initially, I will have to say that I kind of didn't want to join the military because historically and basically what you find out or know about the military is people go to war.
Yes,
so of course, going to war is not something on my agenda for life. But when I started college, my mom was having a very difficult time financially funding college for myself and my sister, because my sister was a senior in college as well. I had a friend that we worked at Riley's Hamburger together right here in the West Ashley area in Charleston, which no longer exists. And she was also in college at South Carolina State, and I went to college at Claflin. She was telling me all this money she got from being recruited into the Army Reserve. And it sounded very interesting because I didn't want to leave school. My mom was struggling, and I was working part-time, but the part-time funds were just not enough to really help a whole lot. So she connected me with her recruiter, and he explained the whole process. And within probably about a month's time, I went ahead and signed the papers. My mom was worried, but understood that I wanted to be able to pay for my own college. I wanted to stay in college, and I wanted to be able to help pay for my own college education. The young lady and I became closer as a result of her helping me with that. And I will have to say that that was what started me with my military career. At the time, I was interested in ROTC, but not necessarily had a set path or a set goal, because in my high school didn't have ROTC. So I joined the ROTC program and was inspired by that. So I took a different route. Instead of staying in ROTC and waiting to become an officer to join, I enlisted when I went in and as a freshman in college at 18.
Wonderful. And how was basic training for you?
Basic training was at Fort Jackson in South Carolina in 1990. In the summer, I did June and July. I did a split option. So I would do basic training one summer and then my school specialty called AIT the next summer. So it was hot, very, very hot. But it was a great experience after the fact. So you're going through a series of training and obstacles, things that I never would imagine I would do or could do. like even running the 2 miles. And I know we ran up to maybe 5 miles at some point, and I was pretty athletic in high school, but it's still not something I would imagine I would even be interested in running 5 miles. Firing weapons. You're around guns a little bit, around your grandfather and father, but not in a way that I thought I would have to actually learn these skills and then master it to a certain level. And I did pretty well, surprisingly. We did an obstacle course, I think it was called Victory, where we had to rappel down a wall, 30-foot wall. We had to jump from one side of the tower over to another side, and it looks like nothing but the ground is below you. So that was a little nerve-wracking, but just going through those obstacles, firing the weapons, even the challenge of being around, I think it was 60 soldiers in my basic training class from totally different backgrounds and cultures.
Yes, sir.
And being able to at least have a good working relationship and build a good cohesive team so that we could all be successful. That was new for me because you're in smaller classes when you're in high school, and even in college my classes were even smaller than my high school classes. So that was probably the biggest group I ever had to interact with and kind of learn to get along, learn to appreciate everyone's differences, and still be myself, and at the same time we all were seeking the same goal, success, and pushing each other to get there. So it was a really good experience. I think it was probably, not that I didn't have confidence, but I was probably a little more on the quieter, not shy, but more reserved side in high school. So it was probably the first phase of building a certain level of confidence I think I carry today that I didn't have back then at 18.
What motivated you to not give up?
Well, my mom ended up being a single mom by the time I was about 12 or 13 was when my dad and she split. And just seeing her not give up. She worked 2 jobs, was always working hard, always advising us about goals and making plans for life. And one thing she always said to me that sticks with me is she wanted us to have more than what she had. And I didn't take that to mean physical property and a nicer car and longer hair. I took that to mean she wanted us to have better opportunities in life, more education. And she may have said that, but I know for sure, I feel like I kind of deduced that over time. So she had a master's degree by the time I finished high school, so I know I needed to have higher than the master's degree. And as far as getting through the military and that aspect, I think between her motivation and seeing how hard she worked to help us have what she wanted us to have, and one of those things is she sent us to Catholic school, mainly because she felt like with some of what was going on with her relationship with my father, that it was better for us to be exposed to a religious background in that environment daily versus going into, I won't blame like public schools, but going around other people who might be going through the same thing. So taking us to a higher level of positivity than a common group of the same thing, if that makes sense. So my motivation comes from her, and then we have a strong religious background that pretty grounded in belief in Christ and God, and working towards a spiritual fulfillment. So those things together kept me motivated, kept me strong, and kept me grounded in seeking to do the right thing and accomplish goals.
Yes, ma'am. And how were you able to keep in contact with your family while you were in service?
Fortunately, living here in Charleston and being right in Columbia wasn't very difficult. And I've been in the reserve the entire time except for basic training, any other military training, and then for 2 different periods of time back in 1990 to 91. I was at Fort Jackson for about 3 months and then in school. And then in 2003, 2004 in Kentucky, Wisconsin first, and then in Kentucky. So it hadn't been difficult. My mom actually visited at Fort Jackson while I was there for basic training, and then my family came up for graduation. We wrote back and forth a little bit, and we were allowed phone calls. So back in the day, a 1 week phone call was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So now everyone has cell phones and have to talk every 2 minutes. Well, that wasn't, required. It's still not required, but it wasn't expected. It wasn't available. So, as long as we had those Sunday phone calls, and I didn't lose my privileges, because there were people who lost their privileges of having that free time on Sundays who couldn't make the phone calls. So I didn't lose any of my privileges. So I was able to stay in contact that way with my family. And they've been supportive over the years. So it's been easy to stay in contact and to make them aware of what's going on with me militarily most of the time.
Yes, ma'am. And how do you feel about the officers and your fellow soldiers?
I will say that I actually am an officer now. I've been a captain for about 6 years, but I've been an officer for just 11 years. I was enlisted for 14 years. So initially I was focused on school, finishing college. And once I got finished, there was an enlisted soldier, Master Sergeant Christian. He may have been a different rank back then, but he said my contract had expired and I had gone up during the summer to catch up some military time. And he said, if you get out, that's the worst thing you could do. That's the worst mistake you can make in your life. Like, I got my money for college, I'm done. I stayed the extra 2 years because I had a 6 and 2 contract where you had to do 6. The other 2 were optional. I could have went in what's called an IRR and kind of sat it out without participating actively during my battle assembly weekends. And he told me that's the worst mistake I could make. I said, well, if I'm going to stay in, we need to get this military thing rolling. I can't stay in and stay at this rank, because my rank was pretty low for the number of years I had been in. So it was basically proven that 1 or 2 things needed to happen. I needed to go to school to advance my career, or I had to improve my overall soldiering a little bit more. And I think it's because I was focused on my civilian education more or less that I didn't really focus on my military career as much. So at that point, I went to military school and I got promoted within a year. At that time, I went to dental tech school and leadership school. And then I had the opportunity to go to another school to be promoted again, but I just started teaching, so it was a year long. And at the time, I honestly didn't know my rights as a teacher or as a soldier, as far as having the ability to maintain my civilian job. So I told him I can't stop teaching to go away to military school. And of course, later on, when I was called on active duty, and I had no choice but to go to military, to go to the military, and I found out all the rights. My job was secure, and so on and so forth. So I wish I had made that move. But so later on, I did, become an officer. And I have the utmost respect. They teach you as enlisted to have the utmost respect for officers. And I had that. And now as an officer, I have the utmost respect for enlisted.
Yes.
So I've been on both sides of the coin. I feel like I can walk in both shoes. And so as an officer, I try to treat enlisted soldiers with respect, with regard to them being very, very important in whatever mission and accomplishing task, and just making the military, whatever branch, work and function and operate. And then vice versa with the officers. It's a great challenge, and you have to, one thing about an officer, I think you have to be able to build your team and have them understand your goals, and then allow them to execute it once you know you all on the same page. And so I think that's important from an officer side. And then with the enlisted side, it's important for them to know how to execute without the officer having to guide them totally. So in that case, it'll help have a healthy balance, a healthy relationship, and it should amount to success all around.
And what are some of your job duties that you had to do?
Right now, I serve at the 3274th, which is the USA Army Hospital at Fort Bragg in North Carolina. Prior to that, I was serving with the 722 in Charleston, which is in North Charleston. And that's a medical support unit. That's a company level unit to the 3274th, which is a battalion level unit. And at the unit here in Charleston, I served as the platoon leader and the admin officer. And those are two big jobs because admin officer, you're taking care of the soldiers, evaluation, and human resource kind of things like their paperwork related to insurance and maintaining their records based on their career information. So that was very important. Soldiers begin to rely on you having answers to career questions and lots of other things related to their families and benefits. So whatever I didn't know, my admin team, we would research and find answers to help the soldiers. So that was an important job. And then my other job was the platoon leader, was taking care of the everyday platoon activities and military activities as far as accountability. If the soldiers are here, if they aren't, why not? If they had any physical problems, what's going on? Trying to help motivate them to stay in guidelines with all the military expectations and standards. And I think that was a very important job too. And both of them were very important to me because it allowed me to interact with the soldiers a lot. It allowed me to not necessarily get personal, but take care of them. And I think that was what was important for me. Now in North Carolina right now, I have a role as a sponsor, the sponsorship program director and an officer is what they call it. And then I support the first sergeant and the S1, which are the administrative team, as an asset to them. So this again is falling in the same category as the sponsor director. They tasked me to develop a sponsor program where when new soldiers come in, we pair them up almost like with a mentor, but it's another soldier literally with the same kind of job skills, and have them integrate them in the unit by helping them to meet all the right people with what resources are found where in process, and have that one person to connect with when they have issues or if something's going on. So it's to help twofold, help the unit maintain its people and take care of its soldiers, and then to promote retention. Because when soldiers come, and just like with students when they come to school, and if you don't take care of them and take care of their needs and show them that they're valued, you end up losing them somehow. So we're trying to retain the soldiers in the unit and in the Army, make sure that they understand the system, and that's the purpose of that job. So it really falls in line with, again, taking care of soldiers, and that's what's important for me.
And did you choose that job, or did they choose it for you?
When I actually did my officer contract, the job that I was selected for sounds way totally different. It's a field medical officer, and that job is, as a field medical officer, I would plan the medical component of a mission with any unit, any type of unit. So, for example, a tanker unit, armor unit,
Mm-hmm.
they would, I would plan what medical assets they needed, how many medics, what kind of equipment, and that will be my role. Well, that role seems to only be used, from my point of view, during war situations, but I still have that skill set. However, when you're in the reserve, the 70 Bravos, field medical officers, are put into what they call staff positions. So like an administrator, logistics, which are your supplies, training, and other key jobs to help support the overall command. So I didn't realize that. So I've never really done the medical job totally. I've done aspects of it during like your 2-week training or your month-long training. It's up to a month depending on which unit and when the funding is available. Then I've done some aspects of it on that time, but on a month-to-month basis at another staff job or a staff-related position.
And did you carry around any item for you to feel that you was protected or for good luck?
Honestly, no, I didn't carry any one item, but I will tell you that at Catholic school, the nuns did a good job of, at least with me,
Okay.
of just making great value in making the sign of the cross as a quick prayer, as a quick way to, ask God for help, or a quick way to acknowledge God. So even when if I see something like a car accident, I might make a quick sign of the cross. So that was one thing that I did. I would even put a cross on my test when I was taking a test as my last little effort to pray prior to starting a test, because you always feel like there's something you don't know or something you didn't study.
Yes, ma'am.
So that was always my last ditch effort to make sure I got a prayer. And so I kind of just use that, and I still do it today. I don't do it as much physically as I do it mentally. So if I still see an accident or feel myself being in a distressed situation, and I try to take a deep breath and kind of visualize making the sign of the cross and regroup. And so I would say that's, I guess, in that sense, I'm carrying the cross with me, as a way to help me get through, or as a prayer to get through whatever it is I'm going through, and vice versa. Honestly, when something bad, I don't want to say bad, but when something happens and it's like finally like, then I throw in a little sign of the cross then too, because now I realize that cross worked and it got me to the other side. So, and I had a PT test this weekend. So the first thing I did was kind of look up, like, thank you, because I'm pretty sure I needed another week to run before I had taken my PT test. But just between life and the winter months, it's always harder to get out and run and be ready.
And how did that PT test went?
Actually, I did well. My score went up by 2 points. My run time went down. Well, went up, but the score went down because my time, it was a little longer. But so overall, I passed. I hate to just have the phrase in my mind, I passed, because I tell students I passed is not good enough. But with all that was going on, I passed is like an A.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I feel like I still got an A, or at least a great success out of it. But I did say that this time I want to, if just minimally, maintain a fitness regimen so that I won't, I can at least exceed higher than my just pass this time. So even if it's just 2 more points, then it's still better than dropping the routine, getting back to business as usual with all the other things that I have going on, and just trying to squeeze that regimen in 2 to 3 times a week to ease the process, ease the tension of the whole testing in the future.
And would you say that you had any mentors to help guide you along the way?
Over the years, I've run into some great soldiers that are good mentors. And then, you see a lot of images out there of soldiers and even other like service members that are not necessarily soldiers. But a few that stick with me are some of the ones I interacted with personally, like the sergeant who suggested that I stay in. Then I have a first sergeant here in Charleston that I think she's a phenomenal person. She actually has a staff member here that's her aunt, Miss Amanda Williams. Her name is Rose McQueen. She actually is like the strongest and most knowledgeable soldier I've ever met. She like knows everything. And if she doesn't, she will find it. She contacts people. She'll do research through military books. And back in the day, we had binders this thick with every regulation in them. And you would have to read and dig. And now, of course, now everything's online. So
yes, ma'am.
It's a matter of taking the time on the computer to find things. But she was just very knowledgeable. And that inspired me to be strong, knowledgeable, to have a strong knowledge background, and or be able to acquire whatever resources I needed. So not to know everything, because that's just impossible, but to be able to successfully manipulate and or acquire information or resources or whatever is needed. And to give you an example of why she inspires me, she had a soldier that did not drive, but the soldier had a challenge getting to battle assembly. So So she would arrange rides for the soldier with other soldiers, to include myself. I even gave her some rides to battle assembly. But she actually taught this young lady how to drive in her own personal secondary vehicle, took her to get her driver's license. So it's like she did everything but buy her a car.
Yes, ma'am.
So by allowing her to have the resource of getting to battle assembly, eventually she was able to save up enough money to buy her own car. And that young lady was in college at the time, graduated, and ended up taking an active duty slot in New York. And I think she probably is maybe 20 to 30% more successful because of this soldier's efforts beyond just the uniform, beyond the soldier,
yes,
if that makes sense.
Can I ask you a question about that, Captain Brown? Do you see a lot of that in the military, or how often do you see that where somebody goes above and beyond what their job description is to help make things work?
I have actually seen it more than less, but we are in the reserve, so I probably am not seeing as much as there may be out there. And I say that because even when I was on active duty, they did a good job of, because I was away from home, they did a good job of taking care of us. They would, invite you in their home, holidays, things like that. They would have activities even at the unit to build camaraderie that you don't necessarily see in civilian jobs.
Right.
Because civilian jobs, more or less, are your 9 to 5. And when you finish, you kind of go home. It doesn't mean relationships aren't there, but they foster it in a different way. So the Army does talk a lot about team cohesion. That's part of your training. I mean, they literally train you. This is what a team is. This is what you need to do in this team. And the team success is important for all of our missions to be accomplished. And so it's hard to separate a team sometimes from actually like a family atmosphere. And so I think that it helps you to build that family atmosphere, and that's what's important.
I just want to follow up on that. Do you see that transition into the teaching world at all? That going beyond, or not as much, or? Honestly,
I'll have to say, for me it does. I do feel like I actually entered the profession because my mom was a teacher, and my mom brought kids home. So we had babysitters that would come and spend the whole weekend. I had a babysitter, I would go spend the weekend with her. And so these people are still connected with my mom today. Some of them ended up being like distant family members. But when I go anywhere, are you Annie Brown's daughter? You just look, tell Miss Brown, how's Miss Brown doing? I cannot go anywhere out. We're from Ravenel. So half of the whole Hollywood Ravenel area, and even in the West Ashley, or if someone sees me and they recognize me, or if I call her name, how's your mom doing? I hadn't seen her in years. She taught me home economics. She taught me to cook, to sew, to do this, do that. So I got a lot of that from my mom as well. I don't still see that in teaching. And I don't blame the people. I think some of it is you don't have the neighborhood schools like you used to. You don't have some of those good old-fashioned neighborhood values like you used to. And so it's changing because society is changing also. So I think that people aren't even some of the younger teachers that I know here, I don't know if they're even taught, to care about the student, the person that's inside the student, as much as they're taught about gathering the data, statistics, and getting the numbers up. And yes, you need to know their socioeconomic background to be able to make good decisions about how to get them to the next level educationally. But for some kids, getting them to the next level educationally is not important at all to them. What's important is to have a next meal, have a place to sleep, that mom can pay the rent. And so I don't think it's the same, but I don't blame any person. I don't want to say blame, but I think it's just the whole change in society and how schools are organized, and just all those changes account for some of the differences.
I agree. I really do agree. What are 3 character traits that best describe you?
Right now, I think I like to think that I'm down to earth. So even as like an officer, some of them can be a little snooty. And those are the ones, I think, some of them that come straight out of college, medical school, and so they haven't been in the trenches. They haven't had to be the worker bees, and not to say they haven't worked hard, but they haven't had to be the worker bees, and sometimes they don't understand that level, and so then we are judgmental from that level. So I try to be that go-between. I like to think I'm fair and consistent, sometimes consistent in the wrong way, but consistent anyway. And fair to students, I try to do whatever I do with one, do with all. I try to make sure they understand that if I've even said or done something they thought was unfair, to be able to come to me and let me know, and we could try to fix it or figure out why I think it is or isn't fair. And I think loyal to military magnet, to the Army, to my family and my children, just the things that mean a lot to me and to my religion.
Yes, ma'am. And what made you want to become a science teacher?
Honestly, I had a love for biology and math, and my initial goal was to be a doctor, and I didn't prepare myself as a procrastinator. I was kind of scared to leave college, leave home, all those things. And so what happened is I decided to become a science teacher for 1 year. And then 2 years. And they kept saying, no, you have to try it more than 2 years to see if you like it or not. And I love teaching, but I kept saying, well, I want to be a doctor. So I'm actually in pursuit of an educational specialist degree now, which will lead to a PhD. So I can still be Dr. Brown, but be a science educator instead.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And what would be some inspiring words that you would tell someone who's willing to join the military?
I would tell them to just do their research, make sure it's for them, and figure out what will work best for them. I would also tell them to expect to grow as a person, because it will change you, and more for the positive than negative. And I would also tell them to, work hard and to set a goal and be ready to accomplish that.
Being a teacher at the Military Magnet Academy, do you think the cadets will have a better impact later on in life just from attending this school?
I think that this school, like none of the others, embodies order and discipline, the things that the military stands for. It also promotes like self-growth and self-development. So they push you to accomplish certain things. Like I said, something as simple as firing a weapon. I never imagined that's something I would do. So they actually give you the training, they give you the resources, they give you the opportunity to learn how to do it, and then they test it. And so that's really what life is all about. Technically, kids go to school to be able to learn, to acquire their academic skills. I think here at Military Magnet, they try to give you more in the way of self-discipline, understanding what rules are and following rules, and then holding you accountable for those rules. And I think any student that starts here maybe in 6th grade and goes all the way up to 12th grade should have a better success rate in life, if not academically, because I can't make the promise of academics for everybody. But if you understand with even something as simple as wearing a uniform every day, wearing it properly, and the expectation that if you're not, you will be held accountable for it, and you are held accountable for it, eventually you'll toe that line. Or you'll decide that you just can't hang, you can't do it, and then you probably would go to another school. There's some students who are not deciding to do that yet, but if they go into the military from here, then they'll realize what was being promoted here really is a great thing.
Yes.
And so I think that the impact that being here at the Military Magnet, the military aspect of it, can be a very, very positive experience if they receive it. So I know all of the students aren't necessarily here for the military aspect of the school, but while you're here, if you're participating fully and trying to get an understanding, it is something that will help you in the future. Whereas people who don't have the military experience or the benefit of kind of seeing some of the order, seeing the accountability part of taking care of yourself, your uniform, and taking care of your, like, you're being systematic about how you do things. And then if you don't have that, it might make even like academic college career more difficult. Also, the other thing I think would benefit the students is the attitude that you can develop from a level of confidence you can get from being a successful part of the military teams and groups. We do some competitions and some like drill teams, things like that. I think those things are important. So when you join these teams, not just like extracurricular teams, but it's almost the same, but you have a chance to be on these teams where it's not about your skill, it's more or less about the hard work you can put in. It's very helpful to the person. So everybody can't be a basketball star or make the basketball team. Everybody can't be a football star or cheerleader, but just about every cadet here can join the drill team. Just about every cadet here can have a chance to be like maybe on the honor guard and things like that. And then every cadet actually participates in the parades and formations and stuff. So it is a character building school that can in the long run benefit students and hopefully parents and society.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much for being my interviewer today. And thank you for serving for our country.
Thank you very much.